Chapter 27 Chapter Summary in which I #LetAdrianCam 2K16 The hashtag has fallen. Chapter Notes. Here's my apology for the last cliffhanger. Basically this is 7k words of actual smut. I don't think anyone who's read the previous 26 chapters is pure anymore, but if you are, please look away. This is mature content. Anyways, enjoy sinners. See the end of the chapter for more notes. There were certain unspoken but wordlessly observed rules in the Agreste household. Most of them had to do with proper etiquette, simple pleasantries that came with being part of an affluent family. And really, they weren't all that hard to follow. 1. Hats and jackets were to be taken off at the door. 2. Voices were to remain at a respectable volume. 3. No running. C. Nothing too outrageous, nothing too hard to abide by. In fact, it had been quite some time since any of those rules had been broken, probably not since the house's youngest occupant was no more than a 4-foot streak of blonde hair and baby teeth ricocheting through the hallways. And those days were long past anyway. But it seemed today was as good a day as any for rule breaking, as evidenced by the fact that that newly returned but now much larger ball of sunshine was currently charging his way through the foyer, gripping his coat tight around him, and taking the stairs 2 at a time as he called out to Natalie that he would be unavailable for the rest of the evening. Needless to say, etiquette was the least of Adrian's concerns as he positively sprinted towards his room, heart in his throat, phone in his hand, and mind solidly in the gutter. Please chat was what Ladybug's last message had read, and he'd be damned if he'd allow something as unimportant as house rules prolong her wait. Or his for that matter. So no, Adrian did not feel any remorse for running or shouting. He didn't feel remorseful for the less than gentle way he prodded Plag out of his coat pocket once they had reached their room, or for the stern plea he threw at the Kwame, begging for his sorely needed privacy. And when at last he was alone, shirt shucked and pants quickly following as eager hands typed out his green light texts, Adrian found that remorse was impossible when the heady thrum of arousal struck out across his every limb. Because it was playtime round 2, and this time he was ready for anything she could throw at him. At least that's what he thought, until his phone began to ring. Ironically enough, Adrian's first reaction was irritation. Why would someone choose now, of all times, to call me? He thought, staring at his screen for a solid 10 seconds before registering the caller ID. When his mind did catch up, however, the irritation was quickly replaced by pure shock and awe at the sight before him. Incoming call, LB3. He never hit answer faster in his entire life. Hello, Adrian said, throwing one knee up on his bed as his heart shifted into an entirely new pulse. Is Ladybug really calling me? There was a single breath from the other end of the receiver, followed by an exhilaratingly familiar voice. Hi chat. Adrian couldn't have suppressed his grin even if he tried. Hi, he responded, settling fully atop his comforter as he tried to puzzle out why she wanted to talk to him right now. He'd been absolutely certain they were about to go for sexting round 2, but perhaps she'd changed her mind. There was a long pause. Ladybug. Oh, she squeaked, the sound followed by a muffled shifting. Yes chat. Is there any particular reason you called me? Well, I mean, I was planning on making good on my promise, but I can hang up if you want me to. Adrian's brow furrowed in confusion. What was she talking about, and why did she sound so nervous? No, don't hang up, he began, racking his brain to recall any promises she had made him over the past few months. He drew up a blank. But, what are you even saying? Shit, Ladybug muttered over the receiver, and Adrian heard a dull thump that sounded suspiciously like she had smacked her own forehead. Listen, so I've never actually had phone sex before. Wait, what now? So obviously I'm not very good at this whole thing, but Ladybug took a deep breath and Adrian followed suit, trying to bring oxygen back up to his brain after it had so quickly shut off at her prior statement. But I promised you an orgasm, and I intend to, well, I want to, deliver. In an instant Adrian's mind flashed back to a week ago, when he had somewhat jokingly told her all he wanted was to come, then proceeded to shake hands in agreement to a pact he'd had no fucking clue about. Deal she'd told him, and he'd completely missed her meaning altogether. Now Ladybug was trying to make good on her promise. Her promise to make him come. You want to have phone sex with me? Adrian asked, voice miraculously steady despite the way his lower abdomen twitched at his sudden understanding of the situation. Phone sex. Ladybug wants phone sex. This is not a drill, people. This is not a fucking drill. Well, I mean, I'm trying to, Ladybug answered, giving a nervous giggle that shot straight to some deeply rooted part of him. That is, if you're comfortable with that. Comfortable was a bit of an understatement in this case. Yes, absolutely. Oh hell yes. Adrian cheered, pumping his fist a few times in celebration as he tried not to let out a giggle of his own. There it was again, that curious combination of love and arousal that only Ladybug seemed to conjure out of him. The concoction was deadly, simultaneously turning his mind to sludge and his body to sparks as he tried to remain composed. Great, came her response from the other end of the phone. Sue, do you have any idea how we start this? He did not. I guess we should maybe do some foreplay, Adrian suggested, shifting himself into a lounging position against his pillows as he racked his brain for any information on how in the world someone actually had phone sex. Homeschooling did not adequately prepare me for this. Oh. Yeah, Ladybug said, seeming relieved at the tip. Foreplay. There was another downright painful stretch of silence. Seems like we're both pretty bad at this, Adrian said with a wince, rubbing the back of his head with his free hand. Thankfully Ladybug laughed at his quip, and the nervous tension mounting between them seemed to ease up at the melodious sound. Yeah, I'm definitely much smoother when I actually have time to plan out my flirts, she said. Plus it's kind of hard to stutter via text. Oh, I don't know about that, Adrian replied, letting a fair amount of chat noir flirtation creep into his voice in an attempt to bring out her Ladybug confidence. I still say your voice is far sexier than any message, my lady. Stuttering or otherwise. The nickname seemed to have the intended effect. When his girlfriend spoke again, the sound sent shivers down his spine. Well, if you think my voice is sexy, you should definitely hear my moans. I definitely should. Trust me, I intend to, Adrian assured her, using his free hand to trace his way down his bare torso to nestle in his sparse happy trail. Oh really? And how do you plan on making me moan, chat on? Ladybug asked, low and curious. Well, for starters, by telling you how hard you've got me right now. He didn't dare take himself out quite yet, despite how badly he wanted to. Adrian knew the first touch would be the beginning of the end, and he'd be damned if he wasn't going to stretch this treat out for as long as he could. The sound she made wasn't quite what he was aiming for, what she was teasing him with, but the drawn-out mmmmm was enough to make him bite down on his bottom lip in response. Well, in that case, Ladybug drawled out, her voice getting more confident with each word, I guess I should tell you how turned on I am, and just how turned on are you, my lady. Enough to soak through my panties, that is, if I were wearing any. Fuck, he'd almost forgotten her little striptease earlier. Adrian groaned at the mental picture of her completely nude, writhing atop her sheets as one hand held her phone up to her head and the other, he suddenly had the burning need to know where her other hand was. Are you touching yourself? He croaked out, putting the portion of his brain not imagining her current position to work, making sure he didn't soak his own underwear. After a brief deliberation, Adrian decided to do away with them altogether, hissing as his swollen cock was freed to rest against his lower abs. I've been waiting for you to tell me to, Ladybug practically purred, and her words almost unraveled him at the seams. You want me to tell you when you should start letting your fingers wander? Please do, she said, the breathless nature of her voice betraying just how equally aroused she was getting at the attention. Adrian's hips slowly dug into the mattress beneath him in response to how turned on she sounded. The thought that he did that he brought such an otherworldly girl to such a state of longing, sent a heady jolt of power right to the middle of his chest. Then go ahead, princess, explore yourself, Adrian commanded, fingers amongst other appendages twitching with want as he strained to hear any whispered reaction from his girlfriend. He desperately craved the attention of his own hand, the one still rising and falling atop his heaving chest, but wouldn't allow himself to give in to temptation, knowing how close he was already just from her words alone. It was almost primal, the desire to ensure she came first, and Adrian wouldn't let up until she was a puddle against her sheets, until she was a sobbing, shaking mess coming apart on the other end of the line. His last thoughts were of himself in that moment, mind still spinning with the image of her slight but powerful body shuddering in on itself, of her sweet voice crying out for him. He lusted after her pleasure more than he could put words to, and so his hand stayed dutifully still. Finally, mercifully, he heard her speak across the receiver. Chat, Ladybug panted, soft and sensuous. Adrian came. He came, and it wasn't a graceful thing. There was no slow shiver fanning down his spine, no coil of pleasure that worked its way across his limbs. If Adrian's regular orgasm was a cresting wave, then this one was a bursting dam, an explosion of heat in the most instantaneous and brutish of ways. This was 4 years of longing condensed into 4 seconds of blinding pleasure, brought on by a single needy utterance from his object of affection. With hands tangled in sheets and a jerk of his hips up into empty air, Adrian was powerless to stop the crashing sensation as it burst its way out of him alongside a shuddering yelp. He took a moment to catch his breath. He recovered his phone from where he'd dropped it atop his bedspread. He wanted to die. Fuck, Adrian stuttered out, bringing the receiver back up to his ear with shaking hands. All those years of training wasted. Ladybug, I just countless hours spent dreaming of this moment, and for what? Yes, chat, she said, and the sound was a knife stuck into his heaving chest. 3 minutes of actual phone sex. I think you just fulfilled your side of the bargain, Adrian groaned out, his eyes screwing shut as hot shame mingled with the aftershocks of his sudden undoing in a fiery flush that encompassed his sweat-slicked form. He would never, ever, be able to live this one down. You think? Ladybug questioned, tone unreadable. I know, he amended with a wince, eyeballing the evidence spattered across his stomach. Each second of silence that followed was another nail in his coffin until it was his girlfriend's hysterical laugh that put him in the ground once and for all. You just, oh my god, she couldn't even get the rest of her sentence out, the words garbled as a painfully victorious laugh echoed across the receiver. He was ready to burrow under his covers and never come out by the time she finally pulled herself together enough to continue speaking. What was that, champ? 2 strokes. More like none, Adrian mumbled piteously, seeing no purpose in trying to sugarcoat it now. Wait, Ladybug said, her laughter petering off as wonder flooded her tone, so you're saying I got you off on my voice alone? He nodded before realizing she couldn't actually see him, which was probably a good thing given the fact he probably didn't look all that sexy, pouting on the corner of his bed with a limp dick and a sour expression written across his flushed face. You did, Adrian confirmed, waving his white flag with as much pride as he could muster. Holy shit, yeah, I'm the world's greatest dirty dialer. Well, no fighting her on that one. I guess that makes me the worst, huh? He said with a little self-depreciating chuckle. I mean, I wouldn't say the worst, Ladybug, I only lasted for like 3 minutes. At least it was an amazing 3 minutes. Wait, really? Adrian asked, perking up at the words. Maybe he could salvage this, maybe he could, well yeah, he heard her say, voicing sliding back into a less jovial tone to settle somewhere along the lines of, was that bashfulness? I mean, I was having a good time, Ladybug continued slowly, and given a few more minutes I probably would have. Oh my god, I didn't let you come. Adrian wanted to smack himself. He was so hung up on his own lack of self-control that he had completely forgotten the fact she was trying to get off as well. Great, now I'm weak-willed and selfish, he thought, running the hand not holding his phone down the front of his face in shame. It's okay, Ladybug said on the other end, her voice recovering its awkward lilt from the beginning of their conversation. I can take care of it later if you know. Adrian said, wincing as he interrupted her for the second time that night. And the award for shittiest boyfriend on earth goes to, he took a deep breath. I want to help you, especially after you gave me that great of an orgasm. Are you even still in the mood? Despite his spiraling self-esteem, Adrian grinned. Give me a few more minutes plus a few more of your lovely moans and I definitely will be, my lady. The powerful force that is a teenage boy's arousal, Marinette breathed out into her dim room. Rivaled only by a teenage girl's sex drive, Chat recited back through the phone, and suddenly she was extremely thankful for his youthful stamina. Marinette made herself comfortable against the pillows beneath her as she prepared to jump back in. Still riding the high of knowing she had gotten him off with her voice alone, the girl couldn't find it in her to be annoyed by her boyfriend's early finish. Turns out making someone orgasm can be a real confidence booster. So, what do you say we start this again? She asked, wiggling in anticipation of what she hoped would be a much longer second round. I'd say it would be my pleasure, but this time around it's all about yours, princess, Chat purred, regaining his bravado eerily fast for someone who sounded ready to sink down into the earth just a minute ago. Well, Chat Noir was nothing if not unflappable. And just how are you going to ensure my pleasure? Eager are we? Wait and see, my lady. I've done enough waiting for this, is that so? Chat drawled languidly. How long exactly? Marinette hummed, Haven already fallen headlong back into a lusty haze as her free hand traced fire up her inner thighs. How long have you been waiting to do this with me? Her boyfriend clarified, voice pitching low with arousal in a way that only increased the heat across her skin. Aye, she didn't have an answer, but thankfully Chat filled the pause. I've wanted you like this for so long, he continued reverently, since the day you first kissed me, and honestly far before that too. Have I ever mentioned how skin-tight your costume is? No more skin-tight than yours, Marinette answered, appreciatively picturing the planes of his body as they crested out from behind the reflective black material of his suit. I'll give you that, Chat conceded with a chuckle, but you're dodging my question. Remind me again. Gain. My brain's a little fuzzy right now. I want to know how long you've been lusting after me, Ladybug. Oh, She took a steadying breath. The first time I dreamt about you was the night after our first kiss, Marinette began, slow and honest as she thought back to when these feelings had been new. She almost wanted to laugh when she remembered how adamantly past Marinette had tried to deny her obvious desire for chat. How quickly things change. I've got news for you, honey, current Marinette waxed ironic, mentally taking 2 months ago Marinette gently by her oblivious shoulder. You've got it bad, and there's a big storm a-comin'. Said Storm interrupted her thought with another pert flirtation. Was it a good dream, my lady? Very good, Marinette assured him, pulling herself from her reverie. And what was I doing in your very good dream? You were kissing me, touching me. Funny, I think I've had that very same dream about you, Chat said with a low laugh. Oh yeah, and when was that? Marinette threw back at him. Every night for the past year or so. That's a little much. You're a little much, actually, make that a lot of much. I guess I can be a handful at times. Chat hummed in response, applauding sound. You know, speaking of handfuls, he began. Whereas, on my breast, Marinette cut in, having anticipated the question before he could even finish it, and waiting for you to tell it what to do. Oh, Chat said, and his little stutter sent a lick of pride racing down her spine. Boy, was he smitten. I'm getting antsy, the girl warned, smirking as she heard him curse. Sorry. Mental detour, her boyfriend winced out, but I'm back to you now, 100% babe. There was a brief pause in which she could almost hear him planning out how to start. Marinette took pity on the lost kitten. If you'd like a hint, my nipple is right there, how could I forget, Chat murmured, clearing his throat before speaking out clearly. All right, I want you to cup yourself, then let your fingers trace over your nipple. Well, he did good up until he made it a question. Marinette felt herself shiver nonetheless, hand moving to obey as she played out the motion he described. She let out a small croon as the pads of her fingers nipped at the pebbled flesh, the sound as much for his sake as her own. Is that good? Chat questioned, and she felt her heart melt a bit at his sincere concern. He really was trying. Very good. It wasn't a lie. Something about groping herself at his insistence was indescribably arousing, and the heat of their exchange prompted a heady blush to roll across her shoulders. I'm glad to hear it, so do you maybe want to pinch, she interrupted with a sharp whine, way ahead of him as she drew her nipple between 2 fingers. Well, I guess that answers that, Chat croaked, his breath coming in shallow gasps now alongside hers. So, Ladybug. Yes. Think you can wedge the phone against your ear with your shoulder? What was he? I think so. Marinette said, blinking at the sudden request. Good, he remarked, voice pitching lower, I want you to be able to touch yourself with both hands. Oh okay. Marinette flushed hotter as she moved to free up her grasp. There was some muffled rustling as she pinned the device against her head, but eventually the girl found a position that worked. Where do you want my other hand? She said at last. Well, I thought I'd let you decide where you want it most. In that case, I'll be sure let you know when I come up with an idea. My lady, kitty, she smirked at his needy little entreaty. Do you know how hard it is for me to not stroke myself right now? Chat groaned in frustration. Extremely hard, I'd imagine, Marinette said with a triumphant little lilt. Having 2 hands free meant she could now give equal attention to both breasts, and she grinned at her boyfriend's obvious desire as she arched up into the electric touch. Bingo. Nah, no way is this guy finishing again before I do. Well, I hate to say it, but I don't think I can let you touch yourself quite yet, she sighed, letting a bit of authority creep into her tone. Not until I get my turn, that is. Understandable, Chat conceded, though his voice was anything but composed. But, in the meantime, where would my lady have me place my hands? Marinette bit down on her lip. She wanted him to follow her motions. Touch your chest. As you wish, her boyfriend replied, though I'd much rather be touching yours, my lady. I don't exactly have a lot going on around that area. Unlike you. You have plenty, she assured him, shivering as she thought back to the picture he'd sent her of his bared pectorals. But I'm serious, Chat, chest and thighs only. We don't need another interruption, and I will not hesitate to hang up and finish myself if you decide to cockblock me again. Say no more. Besides, as hot as the thought of you going to town on yourself is, I'd much rather be around to hear it. Marinette let out a breathy moan in response to his words as she pinched and teased at her breasts. Chat followed with an aroused hum of his own, and the sound shot down to mingle with the almost uncomfortable amount of pressure coiled deep in her core. Don't get her wrong, the sensation was all well and good, but Marinette thought if she didn't get the chance to move lower and soon, she might just go insane. In fact, she was seconds away from indulging her desire when Chat's voice rang out once again. So, have you decided where that other hand of yours should wander, my lady? Because if not, I have a few suggestions. Impeccable timing. Suggestions. Marinette piped up, hoping he was thinking along the same track she was. After all, he wasn't the only kitty craving attention. Well, really just one suggestion, tell me then. There was brief pause, and implied hesitation. Do you, Chad began, breathing out what sounded like a conflicted exhalation before continuing to pose his question. Do you like to finger yourself? I mean, are you comfortable with me asking you to yes? Marinette broke in, biting her lip as she registered the overwhelming need in her voice. I mean, yes, see Chad, I'm comfortable with that. His sigh in response was as genuine of a prayer as she'd ever heard. Well then, Chat said, voice ghosting through the receiver to skitter along the shell of her ear, I want you trail your hand down your stomach, down it went, following his instructions as it skated across the heaving plane of skin. Part your legs, nice and wide, feel your way up your thighs, the pace Chat set for her was tortuously slow and Marinette whimpered, fingers twitching to bury themselves in the pulsing heat just inches away from where she stroked at the seam of her thigh. Please hurry, please let me, and then, I don't, he was floundering again. And next I usually like to start rubbing with 2 fingers, Marinette hinted, not bothering to hide her desire as she planted the right idea in his mind. Up and down, until I'm ready. Thankfully, he took the idea and ran. Good, that's so good, Ladybug, Chat panted. Touch yourself. Marinette took that as her cue to go, finally parting her lower lips with a much-anticipated swipe of her digits. She keened, making sure he was aware of her actions as her fingers fell into a familiar rhythm against the impossibly slick flesh of her sex. Chat, that's, she broke off with a shiver, hips jolting forwards as one finger grazed her most sensitive area. I know, Ladybug, her boyfriend encouraged, the care and want in his voice only spurring her to press harder. When you're ready, I want you to push a finger inside of yourself, I want you to imagine it's mine. Marinette was only too happy to oblige. Her moan was half in response to his words, and half as a result of her index finger sliding knuckle-deep into her clenching core. And true to her word, she imagined that wonderful other belonged to Chad Noir. I want it to be, the shivering girl was close to babbling at this point, but she couldn't bring herself to care. It was all too good. Go on, Ladybug, tell me what you want, Chat begged, barely a step up from her own jumbled incoherency as he panted across the line. I could probably die now, go to hell and still be happy, Marinette mused, arousal making her cognition crawl and her fingers fly. No doubt she would definitely end up in hell if she were to expire right now, as the thoughts swirling through her head were nothing if not sinful. She thought of his body against hers, his voice trailing down her neck. She imagined the planes of his torso, the lilt of his lips, his green eyes tempered with swirling lust. I wanted to be your cock inside of me. I did not just moan that, Marinette flushed deeply at her own forwardness, biting into her lip as he growled low in her ear. She hadn't exactly planned on vocalizing that particular thought, but Chat's response to the vulgar plea all but dashed any traces of embarrassment she might have felt at her slip of the tongue. Fuck, I didn't know my lady had such a filthy mouth on her. He sounded taken aback, though in the best of ways. Chat, I wish it was my cock too. His voice plus that word was a powerful combination, she found, one that socked her dead in the pit of her stomach with raw arousal. I wish I could be there, Chat continued, to take you any way you wanted. Marinette writhed at the sound of the wanting groan the boy let out, screwing her eyes shut as a second finger nudged its way through her opening. The tightness was phenomenal. Tell me how you'd want me to take you. Marinette murmured, trying to force her lust-heavy tongue to cooperate with her down in the gutter thoughts. Fast. Chat gave a breathless chuckle. Of course, princess, as fast as you'd like. But what else? I'd want. Marinette's voice broke as her hips rolled up into her working hands. The motion pressed her palm tight against her clit, and the pressure brought a whole slew of filthy expletives rushing up out of her mouth. Go on, please go on, Ladybug, I'd want to be on top of you, she practically sobbed. Marinette clamped the hand previously pinching her breast over her trembling lips, attempting to stem the wave of sound bursting out amidst her mounting pleasure. Needless to say, she didn't want to wake the entire house when at last she did come. Oh fuck, yes, I could definitely see you riding me, she could too, and the image only sped her actions further. I bet you'd look so gorgeous, be bouncing up and down on my lap. Chat punctuated his speech with another plaintive growl that sent shivers radiating towards the source of her heat. Do you want to ride me, my lady? Yes. Marinette wanted to reply, wanted to keep telling him all the dirty things she pictured them doing together, but the whispered presence of her own loudmouth tendencies kept her from removing her hand. She hoped her muffled cry was response enough. Apparently, it wasn't. Are you stifling yourself? Chad asked, a sliver of admonishment creeping into his panting tone. Busted. Yes, Marinette admitted with a squeak, speaking around her fingers before they clamped down to prevent another loud moan. Don't. It wasn't a suggestion. I want you to scream for me, Ladybug. I see, can't, the girl ground out, stilling her hand momentarily in order to get some blood flow back to her brain. My parents are in the house. A beat. Well, in that case, does my lady need a gag? She could tell by his tone that it was supposed to be a tease, but hell if it didn't give her ideas. She grinned at his wicked suggestion, chest heaving with her pent-up arousal. Throwing out the hand not buried between her legs to feel around in the space beside her, Marinette located the slip of fabric she sought and pulled it up to press against her chest. Not when I have my panties here, I don't, she said in tease of her own, reveling in that way. Chat groaned at her insinuation. God, yes, good, he seemed more than on board. I won't be doing much talking from here on out, Marinette warned him, so I expect you to keep up the conversation on your own. Are you actually telling me to talk more? He asked in an overly incredulous voice. Marinette never thought she'd see the day she'd be able to finger herself and roll her eyes at the same time, and yet chat. Just teasing, Buggy, he soothed, sliding back into his care-filled tone. Now let's get you that orgasm, okay? Sounds good to me. Okay, the girl said, twining her panties within her grasp before a thought occurred to her. Oh, and chat. Yes, my lady. Feel free to touch yourself now. And with that last utterance the final countdown began. Balling the soft cotton up her hand, Marinette wedged it between her teeth and clamped down on the material with a murmur that signaled she was ready to continue. Luckily, Chat seemed to catch the memo. I wish I could see you right now, he began, voice low and hypnotic in a way that seemed to coax her hands back to work. They returned to their prior positions, settling on her breast and mound before greedily kneading at each area. I'd tell you how beautiful you looked with your legs spread and your your chest out. The girl bent herself to mirror his fantasy, parting her thighs as her back arched off the bed in anticipation. Are you touching yourself again? Marinette let slip an affirmative hum, the sound vibrating out from behind her improvised gag as she let her index finger sink slowly back into her heat. Its passage was aided by the slick essence that had only continued to accumulate with each ticking moment she'd spent teasing herself that evening. Good, Chat said, and his praise made her that much more eager to allow a second digit to join its partner as they curled up against the spot she alone had mapped out within her most intimate parts. Hitting that point sent a jolt of pure pleasure racing up Marinette's spine, along with the indication that it wouldn't be long now before Chat had returned his favor in earnest. I want so badly to be there, her boyfriend's voice was hungry, reflecting her own heady sense of need as Marinette rocked against her hand with another stifled cry. I want to be in bed with you, so my fingers could replace yours, so I could touch you in all the places that'd make you squirm and pee pant, so I could treat you like the princess you are. I want you here too, Marinette thought plaintively, unable to voice her confession but hoping her muffled groans made the fact quite clear. Still reeling from her earlier ministrations, the shuddering girl felt herself wind up impossibly tighter with each twitch of her hand. I'm so attracted to you, I don't think you even know what you do to me, Chat continued, true to his promise as his voice never ceased. Thinking about you, thinking about all the things I want to do with you, fuck, it makes me so hard. Marinette couldn't help but fantasize at his words, pulling sharply at the peak of her breast as she imagined something much thicker and longer than her twin fingers gliding its way past her love-slick folds. I can't wait to have you twitching around my cock, around my fingers, on my mouth, anything and everything you wanted, again and again. The noises working their way through her jittering jaw were nothing short of piteous at this point in her high, little cries that synced up with the cant of her hips, with the shudder of her shoulders. Marinette had never wanted to come more in her life. God, ladybug, Chad answered with a groan of his own. God, please just keep making those sounds. Keep pumping your fingers into yourself, and keep teasing at your nipple, just keep moaning. Moan and whimper like that until you come for me. If his halting tone was any indication, her boyfriend wasn't far off from his own second coming, and the thought of them climaxing together only brought Marinette that much closer to the end she so desperately desired. Her fingers positively flew. Please, please, you're just so beautiful, too close, too good, you're beautiful, and incredible, I can't believe you're mine. Something about the word ignited her, and her hands' ministrations reached a fever pitch as the girl ground and thrust and wiggled her way towards sweet release. Marinette's body fluttered, a phenomenal heat radiating out from the space between her thighs as Chat's voice egged her ever closer. Too hot, too right, come for me. Please just come for me, my lady. It was that last, longing pant of her pet name that finally undid Marinette. A high, shuddering keen worked its way up her throat, mixing poignantly with the sound of her boyfriend spurring her on as she came loud and hard, clamping around the two fingers still inside herself with a rolling shiver. Through her ecstasy, Marinette vaguely registered the fact that her makeshift gag did very little to actually stifle the noise of her crashing pleasure, but she couldn't find it in her to worry about that now. Because now she was writhing. writhing and shaking and stilling her hands in a vain attempt to somehow stem the flow of now all too good pressure working against her oversensitized flesh. Every part of her throbbed and pulsed, heartbeat echoing its way through her twisting chest as Marinette was swept up in a hazy wave of sensation. This orgasm was heat in motion, the ferocity of it doubled by the fact she could hear Chat follow her over the threshold as he finished loudly in her ear. My lady, he murmured over and over, easing her down from her tightly coiled state as Marinette sunk boneless into her bedsheets. And suddenly everything felt just right. There was no more excess of heat, no more mounting pressure. Just their mingled breaths and hidden smiles pressed against their glowing phone screens. Still shuddering in the most pleasant of ways, Marinette allowed herself a moment to soak up Chat's whispered iterations his lady, she was his lady, before making a move to properly orient herself again. The hand buried between her twitching thighs slid from its position, trailing wetness in its wake as Marinette's fingers worked their way up to free the bikini from where it was bunched between her teeth. Her first semi-coherent thought was, well, that was fucking amazing. Pure eloquence. Chat, kitty, Marinette breathed, spiraling earthbound from her high as she spoke low into the receiver. The words were almost lazy, the way they rolled off her love-slackened tongue bringing to light just how much her orgasm had taken out of her. But this is a good kind of tired. Chat seemed to gather up the pieces of himself before she did, speaking up in a wondrous croon that only stood to further the way Marinette's stomach fluttered in her post-orgasmic bliss. That was absolutely incredible. You, my lady, are absolutely incredible. You aren't so bad yourself, Marinette hummed out between breaths, her blush taking on new meaning as the reality of her situation dawned on her once again. I just had phone sex with Chat Noir. But she would find the time to freak out about it later because, I don't know, Chat nudged from the other end of the line, that last noise you made sounded a hell of a lot better than, no so bad, wouldn't you agree? She could practically sense his shit-eating grin. Don't you push it, or I hang up, Marinette warned, giving an endearing eye roll at how quickly her alley cat had regained his swagger. Big talk from the guy who came from my voice alone, she thought smugly. You wouldn't dare, her boyfriend replied with an easy chuckle. You like it when I talk, remember, bugaboo. She hummed, but didn't contest him. Chat, we're both lying naked in bed after bringing each other to orgasm, maybe find something better to call me than bugaboo. My scarlet goddess. No. Lovebug. Closer. Princess Loudmouth. Only if I get to call you Prince Premature. You know, if you hadn't just given me the best 2 orgasms of my life, I would have probably hung up on you just now. Marinette giggled at his audible pout. Well, I hate to say it, she began, but we probably should hang up soon. The girl pulled her phone back to the little 1023 atop her screen. Have we really been on the line this long? Worn out, are we? Chad asked, catching the yawn she couldn't quite stifle. I guess it's to be expected after something like that. Marinette gave a noncommittal mumble at his pass, wiggling her way between the sheets as her legs pulsed with the after effects of her denouement. I'm tired because it's late and because I have school tomorrow. I need sleep and so do you. Well, I can't argue with that, he conceded with a sigh. Hey, Ladybug. Yes. We should, I'd really like to do this again, and not just the sexy parts. Chad paused, and when he spoke again, Marinette could hear the longing smile in his words. I just really like talking to you. I like talking to you too, she responded, grinning into the darkness of her room at their shared sense of childlike giddiness. So yeah, we should do this again. Awesome. The warm silence that neither of them were eager to break stretched on before his soft voice rolled out of the receiver to wrap its way around her ear. So I guess I'll see you on patrol this Wednesday. If Paris isn't attacked between then and now, absolutely, Marinette replied sleepily. Perfect, I look forward to it as always. As do I. Good night, kitty. Sweet dreams, my lady. As much as she had grown to love the sight of Chat's signature heart emoji, Marinette found she enjoyed the sound of him bidding her goodnight even more. Especially with his orgasm still evident on his tongue. And when at last she begrudgingly hit end, she couldn't help but grin at the warmth that still settled across her, heavier and more comfortable than the blanket atop her bare skin. Operation Whatever had been a soaring success, even if there were a few hiccups along the way, and Marinette couldn't have been more content as she rolled over to burrow her flushing face into the pillow beneath her. She couldn't wait to see him again. As luck whether good or bad would have it, the teen didn't have to wait until patrol to see her boyfriend again, because she ran into him during her lunch hour the very next day. Marinette could only freeze on the street corner leading to her and Aaliyah's favorite cafe, taken aback by the sudden spotting. They'd walked this route almost every day like clockwork for the past 2 years, and the thought that she could possibly encounter Chad in such familiar territory wasn't one Marinette had ever paused to consider. Yet there he was before her. Him and his cocky grin, the one that pulled at the lips she was oh so familiar with. Him and his peridot eyes, they always glimmered like that when challenged to a race across the rooftops. Him and his confident posture, shoulders leaned back, hips thrust forward, one hand behind the head. Him. Marinette's eyes laser-focused, body stilling and mind spinning as she took in the sight of her boyfriend unmasked and in broad daylight. He didn't move either, pinned under her gaze as he held his pose indefinitely. Not surprising, seeing as though he was a picture on a billboard. And billboards simply didn't move, not even if they were advertising the illustrious Agreste brand. Mari, are you alright? Kill, Marinette responded casually, voice dangerously chipper and verging on the psychotic. Giving her best friend a swift nod before turning on her heel, the girl set off in a single-minded march down the road she knew would lead her back home. Alright, Aaliyah said from behind her, apparently getting the hint to not question any further. So you wanna hang out later tonight or? Marinette didn't answer, probably because she couldn't hear over the frantic rush of blood pumping behind her eardrums. Either that, or because she was too enthralled by her own worrying thoughts, too enthralled by the image now branded across the forefront of her brain. The billboard image of a bed-headed Adrian Agreste, broad shoulders trapped under a black leather jacket and grinning mouth lined with striking tangerine lipstick. It was the very same shade that had clashed so horribly against her complexion, the one that had taken an insane amount of effort to finally remove from her kiss-stained cheek. The one he had jokingly patterned her with the night he told her he'd love the girl under the mask, regardless of who she was. And despite the world-shattering, fabric-unraveling flood of realization she currently faced, Marinette did have to admit once again, it really was a good color on him. Chapter end notes. Remember when everyone thought the reveal would go down because Adrian would recognize Ladybugs' lipstick, carrot.